Good morning, everybody. It is 9:30 here in California, and I think we are ready to get started with today's Hangout on Air on AdSense ad implementation and ad placement. My name is David McDonough. If you haven't seen me in the past few days for the general policy Hangout on Air or the adult policy Hangout on Air, I'll give you a quick background, and then we'll dive into the presentation that we have for you today. So again, I'm David McDonough. I work in the Product Quality Operations organization at Google, and our job is to protect Google products on a whole and ensure that, sort of specifically from an AdSense point of view, coming up with AdSense policies to create the best user experience, the best publisher experience, and the best advertiser experience. And we'll get more in depth and describing and explaining exactly what that means today. For now, though, hopefully everybody has tuned in. Quickly, the way that today will work is we'll have a presentation for 20 or so minutes, and then I'll try to leave time at the end to answer any questions. If you have any questions, the best way to ask them, or any questions or comments, please put them in on the event page. We will have somebody going through that, and I will try to pick out a few good questions at the end to ask. Again, we can't answer any questions specific to any individual publishers, so these should be questions that will apply to sort of the greater AdSense network. Something that you think, if you have a question, there's a chance that somebody else has that exact same question, and it would be super helpful for me to answer. So without further ado, I will jump into today's presentation, which is again on ad implementation policies and ad placement policies. We've talked before about some of the content policies we have in place. These are more behavioral policies. So if you'll bear with me for a second, I'm going to share my screen so that you guys can see the presentation that I have for you today. So 1 second here. A little bit of a crazy effect there. And so you got me. Here we go. So AdSense policy, ad placement guidelines. What we're going to go over today is what exactly does ad placement mean? What are we even talking about here? We'll go into exactly what deceptive placements are, and we'll walk through about 12 examples of placement violations and ad implementation violations. Then we'll talk about how to stay compliant, and we'll jump into, after that, useful resources, and then again, as I mentioned, we will answer some questions with comments and questions that you guys place on the event page. So what does ad placement mean? And if you've been to any of the other Hangouts on Air, or you've been to our help center, you'll know that from a very high level, what we are here to do, and I briefly glazed over this before, is to create the best experience. So first and foremost, we're concerned with the users. Is it a good experience for the user? We say if you focus on that alone, everything else will ideally fall into place. So what that means is when we try to enforce and create these ad implementation and ad placement policies, we're trying to ensure that the user knows what's an ad and what is content. It's got to be very clear what they're clicking on, whether it be content, whether it's a link internally to another part of their site, or if it's an advertisement. So it should be abundantly clear that the advertiser, that the user is seeing an ad and wants to click on that, and they're clicking on that because they're interested in what that ad has to offer. What this does, and again, our whole purpose is to create a long-term economically viable and economically sustainable network. If we have cases where the user is going to a site and doesn't know what an ad is, or what is content, they're going to end up inorganically or accidentally clicking on ads. When you find users accidentally clicking on ads who they aren't actually interested in what that product that advertiser is, the product that advertiser is selling, the advertiser's not going to see any return on that investment, and the entire network sort of collapses. So at the end of the day, the goal is first and foremost create a good user experience. After that, then to create a network where there is value add for the advertiser, and if the advertisers are continually seeing there's a great value to advertising on this network, there's more competition and they're willing to spend more. When they're willing to spend more, the general publishers make a lot more money, and that's the end goal. So when all three synergistically are working together, we create sort of a long-term, really healthy network that you guys as publishers should be really proud to be a part of. And that's what we refer to when we talk about ad placement and sort of how the ad is implemented on the page. And we'll get into more detail with specific examples. So what are deceptive placements? Deceptive placements can, again, as I mentioned, lead to accidental clicks or invalid clicks that cost money to advertisers. This is any time an ad is clicked, that advertiser has to pay for that. And if they're paying for that, but the user is not actually interested in that advertisement, then that's just a net loss. Nobody really wins there. So some of the deceptive placements that we see very often are encouraging clicks or format mimicking, aligning images with ads, mislabeling ads, having nothing but ads above the fold. So when you talk about above the fold, that's when you load up a web page, everything that you see on your screen without having to scroll is above the fold. Everything when you start scrolling is below the fold. We see fake placements, modifying ad code, unnatural attention, ads in pop-ups, ads pre-rolling, ads too close to navigational controls, and ads on dynamic content. And we'll go, again, into further detail with all of these. But at a high level, these are some of the most common offenses that we see, and we are tasked with enforcing these policies to make sure that we're protecting our users, we're protecting our advertisers, and at the end of the day, protecting that publisher network, because as a publisher, again, you want to be associated with the best possible network, the best possible content, the best possible ad implementation that builds your reputation as a publisher and only drives increased interest from advertisers. So now we'll walk through a few of those violating placements. Number one is encouraging invalid clicks. Publishers absolutely may not encourage users to click on ads or click their own ads for any reason at all. Again, this undercuts the entire ecosystem by having a user click accidentally or invalidly on that advertisement. Publishers, we often see them using language such as support my site or click my ads, visit our sponsors, click the Google ads, click the blue links below. We need a new server. Please support us. I've seen one. A great site, a great example was help me pimp my ride and click on my ads because publishers are getting revenue when users click on their ads. But this is again inorganic revenue. It's not something that we want as part of our network. So we have some examples to the right. Don't forget to help support the site by clicking on some Google ads, or check out our great offers below with an arrow pointing to the ads. Again, these are things that are artificially inflating the number of clicks that ad would get, and that's not something that we allow. Again, the rule of thumb here is every time a user visits your site, they should be intrinsically interested in clicking on that ad because they see something that they are interested in. So they see summer holidays or an all-inclusive sun holiday, for the example on the right of this slide, and they want to click on that of their own volition, not because they see a big arrow pointing to it or because if they click on that, they're going to help your website make a little bit more money. That is not the interest and the purpose of those ads. Format mimicking is another one that we see a good amount. Publishers may not format content next to ads to look like ads, or vice versa. They may not format ads to look like content. So here at the top, what we have is a navigational menu on the left with home, news, sports, and TV. That's how, if you visited the website, you would navigate between the different pages on their website. And then right next to that, we have a Google link unit. Same format as the navigational menu, but it's somewhat hard to tell. And if you're moving pretty quickly and navigating the site or surfing very quickly, you might accidentally click on that Google ad. And again, that's what we're trying to avoid. Here on the bottom right, you see a Google ad thrown in with a bunch of other game images. It's mimicking the format of the images on the site. And then on the left here, we have search results, and we have external website links, and then we have that Google ad placed right in the middle there. So as you're going through the list of links here, it's very hard to tell what is a Google ad and what is part of the website. And that's, again, very high level. Our goal is to make sure that the user is abundantly clear about what part of this site is content and what part of the site is ad. Above all else, if you come away and remember nothing else from this presentation, that's what I would really strongly recommend you try to keep in the back of your head when you're building your website, when you're writing your code. Make sure that it's very, very clear for the user what is an ad and what is content. Aligning images with ads is another policy that we enforce. Publishers may not align images that appear on their site because it can confuse users to assume that that image is related or associated with that advertisement. Here at the bottom, you'll see a few advertisements with an unrelated image directly above. What we see happens here most frequently is the user goes to click on that image thinking it's part of the ad, and when they obviously can't click on that image, they'll go right below and click on the ad, and that's an inorganic click because they're not interested in what that ad has to say. They're just trying to get to that image, and that's something that we don't allow. Similarly, up at the top here, you'll see this advertisement with an image placed to the right. It's a separate, the advertisement to the right placed right alongside this content. So you might think that the Real Flame freestanding electric fireplace, which is a listing on your website, is associated with that ad, that online games ad to the right, and that can confuse people, and again, leads to those inorganic clicks that we're trying to avoid. Mislabeling ads. So publishers are not allowed to place ads under any misleading header or title. Again, as this confuses users into thinking that ads are part of that header or might be associated with that header. This one's actually very clear cut. The only two things that we allow, the only two labels that we allow are sponsored links or advertisements. The plural of advertisement, obviously, would also be allowed. So those are the only two derivations that we allow to be used as a label above your advertisement. You cannot say great resources or my favorite links or any other. You can't even say sponsors. We have legal onus to our advertisers to make it abundantly clear what they are sponsoring and what they are not sponsoring, to keep them separate. So the other reason for this is, as I mentioned, it's got to be very clear to the user that these advertisements are placed there by Google. They are in no way associated with the actual publisher that they're serving on. So one of the things, and this is one of the policies that's very often violated accidentally because people don't know about the policy, or perhaps they've placed an ad underneath a title or a heading, and it's not intentionally mislabeling, but when we look at it, and we have this global reviewer team that's taking a look at all of these ads, we always have sort of two eyes on these. You've got to try to look at it from the user's point of view, and when at all else, be as safe as possible and keep your ads away from titles or any inadvertent labeling. Only ads above the fold. As I mentioned before, when we say above the fold or below the fold, what we're talking about is exactly what you see when you open a website on your computer. So when you first load a website, it's everything that you see without touching the scroll. That is above the fold. As soon as you start scrolling down, what you see when you scroll is what is in the industry referred to as below the fold. So this derives from newspapers, where you get a folded newspaper. Obviously, the premium content should be what's above the fold. It's the first thing you see. It's right there. Then when you shake out the newspaper and open it, you see what's below the fold. So we've adopted that for the internet. And what we try to do here is, again, the same way you would in a newspaper. You want to see content. You don't want to see that newspaper and see nothing but ads. So you should be able to open a website and you should see very good content, unique content that's adding value. You shouldn't see nothing but anything but ads. Sorry, it's a double negative. You should not see tons of ads. It should be good content. So if we see that your site has nothing but ads above the fold and all the rest of the content is pushed below, it's a terrible user experience, number one, and B, And number two, sorry, it's very tricky for them to tell what is content and what are ads. Fake placements. Ads may not be placed on top of video player content or placed on fake video or game screens in order to encourage users to click invalidly while they're trying to play a video or play a game. Here we have an example of an ad for content ad placed right on top of a video. So when that user tries to click on that video to play and watch the video, they're going to get an ad, and a lot of times, as you know, when you're trying to get a video to load, if it's buffering, you're going to click around errantly and just sort of try to do whatever to click as furiously as possible to get that video to play. Oftentimes, people will place an ad there to pick up some of those clicks, and again, those are certainly considered invalid inorganic clicks. Modified ad code. This one is very similar to the last one, where publishers may modify their ad code, but may not modify their ad code in any way that artificially inflates performance or harms advertisers. In this example to the right here, we have a similar situation where the publisher has not only placed the ad on top of a video, but they've modified it to make it extremely small so that it sort of is camouflaged with that play button. And we've found a few examples where people will shrink the size of that ad so you can't even read it at all. But when you go to hit play, you accidentally click on, and unknowingly the user will click on that ad, which is extremely deleterious to the advertiser. So publishers may not alter the ad unit in any way beyond the approved size options. They can't place ads in a floating box that overlaps with content. They can't manipulate ad targeting or use hidden keywords or iframes to place ads against content that's unrelated, or they can't distribute ads in emails or software. One thing I do want to mention for some of these ads on top of videos is that we do have a separate product called Ads for Games, where we do allow you to place an ad over a game, for example, and we have a separate product called Ads for Video, where we allow you to place an ad on top of a video. And that's a separate pre-roll product that we have that's built specifically for that purpose. It's when we see an ad for content, otherwise known as an ad that we would put just alongside the side of your blog, for example. That's when we see that being placed over video, over games, that's where we see the policy violations, because the product is being misused and abused. Unnatural attention. You can't bring excessive attention to your ad unit, so you can't use symbols or arrows, graphics, any other image, any other smart art, anything that would really cause unnatural or undue attention to the user and bring that user to the ad. On the right-hand side, you can see this little character pointing at the ad. That's bringing unnatural attention, and it's going to lead to unnatural clicks and inorganic, invalid clicks on that ad. Similarly, you can't have ads that float or remain static while a page scrolls, or sticky ads. So as you are scrolling and as the site is moving upwards, you can't have the ad staying over content and staying on the screen with you. The ad has to move, has to scroll up with the rest of the content. Hopefully my pantomiming is somewhat understandable there. But these floating ads, again, are going to artificially affect clicks, and that's something that we can't allow on the global display network. Ads and pop-ups. So everybody hates pop-ups. That's one of the primary reasons that we do this, is to protect the user. Publishers may not place an ad or search code in any pop-up, pop under a separate window, anything that jumps out from the site when you first load it. Here we have an example of an ad appearing in a pop-up, covering up content, overlapping content. Again, it's a terrible user experience. I've yet to meet anyone who really loves pop-ups. So we want publishers and advertisers to be associated with a great user experience, because the better the user experience is, the more users will come back, the more they'll click on ads, and the more publishers at the end of the day will be paid. So that is the driver for that policy. Ads pre-rolling to games. We kind of glazed over this earlier, but publishers may not place a pre-roll ad while a game is loading. This is a feature of AdSense for games, as I mentioned. Signing up for AFG is a separate product and is built specifically for that purpose of placing an ad over that game. ads too close to navigational elements. So this will often lead to accidental or invalid clicks when the advertisement is placed right next to a navigational element. We saw this earlier. A lot of these policies can fall into sort of different buckets. We saw this earlier with some of the deceptive placements. This one is specifically when you have, again, you look at the top here, you've got this ad, this link unit right under the navigational element. So it's going to be, it's so close in proximity that when you are trying to click on newer posts or home, you might accidentally click on affordable hotels or Dublin hotels. Same with the bottom. This person has the click to download link, which is a part of their site, and that is the content, but they've got that sandwiched right between two ads. So it's very, very easy for the user to accidentally click on the ad either above or below. And what I always try to say here is, imagine if you are looking at this with somebody who's not well versed in the World Wide Web and has no idea what they're doing. Maybe imagine you're looking at this and your 7-year-old daughter is controlling the mouse. She's going to be erratic. She's going to be all over the place, clicking around. It's got to be very clear to her, and it's got to be very easy to click on those content links versus those advertisement links. And that's why we have these policies in place, is again to protect those and avoid those invalid clicks. Ads on dynamic content. So ads may not be placed on any pages or sites where dynamic content exists, such as live chats, instant messaging, or auto-refreshing contents. We had a great question about this in the general policy refresher that we did a few days ago. This policy is in place to really protect the advertiser and protect their brand. So it's impossible for us to monitor what is being said in these dynamic content placements, in these chat boxes, for example. We have to ensure that we are always placing advertisements on family-safe content. So what that entails is, whenever you place an advertisement on a website or a blog, we've also checked the content to make sure that it is family-safe and appropriate. There's no explicit text or foul language that might be harmful to the brand. We can't do that with dynamic content, and what you run into is a scenario where if we've got a big advertiser, a big brand over here, they are facing really very high risk with a pretty bad incident to their brand if they're placed right next to a very, let's say, a racist conversation in chat or a sexually explicit conversation in chat. That could be extremely harmful for their brand, and that's something that we can't monitor. So because of that, we can't allow ads on that dynamic content. So that's sort of a deep dive into some of the more granular policies that we have regarding. Let's take a look at how exactly to stay compliant. The best thing to do, again, I mentioned earlier, you've got to it's got to be abundantly clear what is content and what are ads. Above all else, that should be your #1 goal. It should be very easy to tell. It should be very easy to click on one versus the other, and it shouldn't be a situation where you're bringing unnatural attention to the ad over the content. Again, content is king here. You should be focusing all of your time creating unique, valuable content for the user. As long as you do that, you'll increase page views, you'll increase traffic to your site, and the revenue will fall into place. You don't need to resort to tricks or any of these sort of black hat techniques to try and squeeze an ad in between parts of your content, or parts of maybe two pictures, or any of the other deceptive placements that I've mentioned. That's just not a network that is going to be sustainable in the long term, and at the end of the day, it's going to be very bad for the majority of our publishers. Again, and I've mentioned this in some of the other Hangouts, what we're trying to do is create the best possible network for publishers. And when you have advertisers who aren't happy with their placement, they're going to go away. They're not going to come back to spend money on this network. The vast majority of the AdSense network is compliant, and they're all trying to be cooperative, great publishers, and we love that. There's a very small sliver that are violating our policies, and of that small sliver, that are violating, the majority of those violators are doing so accidentally. So it's our hope through these Hangouts to really try and increase transparency. We're doing this because you guys are a huge part of this ecosystem. So we're here to increase transparency, to educate publishers and users and advertisers about our policies, because there's a tiny, tiny, small amount of people on AdSense, a small percentage that are willfully and intentionally violating our policies. So this isn't for them. They're going to see this. They know what the policies are, and they're intentionally going around them and avoiding those. We're going to get them out of our network as quickly as possible. This is really for the people who want to be compliant, and maybe you accidentally violated a policy. Usually they're not too egregious. We'll give you a little bit of a warning to tell you that you have indeed accidentally violated this, and we'll bring you right back into the network. As long as you're willing to be cooperative, we're happy to have you as part of our network. So remember, consider your users above all else. Create good content for your users and make them happy. Create a great user experience. Everything else, I promise, will fall into place. Don't ask users to click on your ads. That's going to artificially inflate or affect your ad serving, and that's something that we're going to have to take action on. Don't try to trick users into clicking. Again, that's a terrible user experience. It's terrible for the advertiser. And again, at the end of the day, it's really terrible for all the other publishers who want to be a part of a healthy, safe, and fair network. And then avoid users. So try to make it very clear what is an ad and what is content. We've got a ton of amazingly robust resources in our help center at support.google.com/AdSense. What I would strongly suggest is while you're building out your website, when you're writing your code, make sure you're checking in weekly, daily, hourly with the help center. These things, the help center is constantly being updated. We are always proactively looking at our policies, making sure they all make sense, making sure the wording is very clear, making sure we can do the best job that we can to be transparent and let the publishers know exactly what our policy is. And that help center is the best place to do that on an ongoing basis. So check that while you're building your site. Check that constantly as you're maintaining your site. Check the help center if you have heard from us and there might be a warning that you're in violation. Go through our help center, check to make sure that you're compliant with all of our policies. And as soon as you do that, and you make sure your site is okay, we'll let you right back in the network. It's no harm, no foul. We've also got the help forum, which is a great way for users to work with each other, publishers to work with each other to ensure that everybody knows what is policy compliant and what is a violation. So that's an enormously helpful resource for everyone. I'd strongly recommend going in there. That publisher to publisher help is great. It's a great way to get you might go in there for one thing and get that question answered, and then you find out a ton of other useful insights that might double or triple your revenue. So I really strongly recommend using the product forum. We also have our blog where we're constantly coming out with blog posts to update and educate publishers, advertisers, and users on our AdSense policies. And then lastly, this is because you guys are a huge part of this ecosystem, you can also report some of these sites if you see a violation. If you see another publisher violating these policies or maliciously placing ads, trying to trick users, any of the violations that we went over, you can click on the Ads by Google or Ad Choices logo using the top right-hand side of the ad, and it'll take you to a page where you can report it to us. We will take a look at that complaint within 48 hours and we'll evaluate them and either take action or and enforce our policies, or we'll clear them. Either way, we're all users of this network, right? And so it's up to all of us to kind of make sure that we have a clean, healthy, and fair network for advertisers, users, and publishers. The more we do that, the more, again, everybody wins. I know it's corny, but that's really how the ecosystem works. And if we try and create the best possible network in the long term, again, I think everybody, and you'll realize that everybody wins in the long run. So that's it for our presentation. Again, it's incredibly enjoyable for me to get to do these because we get to sort of be really transparent and try to educate you guys. We listen to your comments. We listen to what your complaints, what you guys have to say, and we're doing everything we can to make things as clear as possible. as concise as possible, to make as effective policies as possible. Again, so that all publishers, and the vast majority are all compliant publishers, but to make sure that everybody has a great experience, a great user experience, a great advertiser experience, and a great publisher experience. So with that said, I'm going to dive in really quickly and take a look at some of the questions that you guys have asked. Again, we will be putting this live for anybody who wasn't able to make the presentation. It's going to come down and be private for about a day or so, and then we'll put it back live in our AdSense YouTube channel. So feel free to forward this to any of your publisher friends or advertisers or users who weren't able to tune in live today, but you think might be very interested in excuse me, this presentation. I'll leave the helpful resources page up for a second while if you'll bear with me, I'm going to bring up some of the questions that we have here. 1 second. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to stop the screen share for 1 second. Okay, so I had a little bit of technical difficulty there, but hopefully I'm back up now. I'll start over with that question. If I create 10 new pages with 2 AdSense ads on each page, and my blog plugin compiles all 10 onto one long blog page, will AdSense see the blog page as having 20 ads and penalize me because of the 3 ads per page rule? So yes, indeed, we will penalize you for that. Unfortunately, we can't allow more than 3 AdSense ads per page. Again, this is a bad user experience. And it's bad for the advertiser as well. And at the end of the day, while in the short term, what we could do is we could say, there's no limit, place as many ads as you want on your page. In the short term, would we make a lot of money? Sure. Everybody would make a lot of money, but extremely quickly that ecosystem would erode because it's a terrible user experience. No advertiser is going to want to pay to be one of 30 ads on a page, so they're going to leave the network and the ecosystem falls apart. So that's why we have to limit it to 3 ads per page, 3 AdSense ads per page. Okay, another question here about ads on pages behind a login. So publishers are welcome to place AdSense ads on password-protected pages as long as those pages comply with all of our program policies. And again, I would refer to the Help Center to really make sure you are completely fluent with all those program policies. And then when applying for the AdSense program, you've got to make sure you provide us with a non-password protected page that we can review, so we can ensure that you're adhering to all of our policies. If your pages require a login and irrelevant ads are appearing, you can improve some of your ad targeting by granting our crawler access to login protected pages. And again, there's a lot of robust information in our Help Center that will explain exactly how to do that. That's a great question, though. Let's see here. When you use a blended format, what is the best practice to make sure the ads are not mimicking the content, specifically when the ads are placed next to or below it? So our format mimicking policy states that publishers may not interpret Google ads in a manner that disguises the ads in any way at all. Again, as I mentioned, it's got to be abundantly clear what is an ad and what is content. You don't want to try and trick users into thinking one thing is an ad and one thing is content. This includes formatting neighboring content to look identical to the ad. There should be no instance where you're camouflaging one or the other. You shouldn't be camouflaging content to look like an ad. You shouldn't be camouflaging the ad to look like content. and that'll fall under our modify either format mimicking or deceptive implementation, layouts that might encourage invalid clicks, or I think I said format mimicking, or modifying ad code, going in and changing the color or the size or the shape or the orientation of an ad to make it look completely different and look very similar to the content. We have some very malicious users, a very small percentage, fraction of a percent that do this and that intentionally violate our policies. But some people will go as far as to change the size of the ad to cut out maybe the ads by Google link, or to cut out part of the ad so that you can't even tell that it's an ad. And again, we have ways to see what the ad sizes are, and we'll take action on that almost automatically. So that is not something that we allow in any way, shape, or form. Great question, though. Do you have any best practices for placing ads in forum topic pages? The pages including the discussions themselves. So we see this a lot, and this is one of the larger instances of policy violations that we come across for a variety of different reasons. First and foremost, we do not allow ads to be placed within forum posts. This is a violation of our policy for a variety of different reasons, because we can't, again, moderate the content of that forum post. We can't really monitor that and ensure that it's family safe. You can place ads in the sidebar or as a header or a footer with a banner ad, but you cannot place it in that forum post. We place the onus on the publisher to monitor that content, to monitor that forum, and ensure that it's all family safe. So not only can you not place that ad inside a forum posting, but with user-generated content, it's extremely difficult to monitor and maintain a family-safe network within those user-generated content forums. It's great that you have an ecosystem where you have users coming in and participating and interacting with each other, but you've got to make sure you put some steps in place to monitor that content. Maybe crowdsource your enforcement by having a report button on each forum page so that the vast majority of innocuous forum users will see bad content and they'll report it. There you can put text classifiers in place to make sure a flag is raised anytime certain words are used. And there are a variety of different techniques you can use to ensure that forums are monitored and moderated and kept clean. You still can't put the ad within those forum posts, but you can put ads in the sidebar of that forum as long as you have those moderation and monitoring steps in place. Let's see here if we can find one more question. Okay, so we have, you are not allowed to have one page called sponsors. Correct, you are not allowed to have one page called sponsors where you have all of the ads. You are not allowed to place the word sponsors directly above an ad. You can only label ads, and this is a very black and white one of our policies. You can only label ads sponsored links or advertisements. And those are the only two things that we accept. Anything else, we're going to have to consider mislabeling, and it's going to be a case where we'll have to warn potentially, depending on how egregious it is, disable ad serving to that page. Similarly, what I would imagine from this question is you're asking about a page that says, just a sponsors page that has nothing but ads. Again, that's going to be a page that has no content and nothing but ads, and that's a terrible user experience. Each individual page should have great value-add, unique content that the user enjoys visiting. We would certainly not allow a page that contains nothing but ads, as again, that's a terrible user experience for both the visitor to that site, the advertiser, and it brings down all publishers as a whole. So I think that's all the time we have for all the questions we have time for today. Again, it's been extremely enjoyable being here sort of to help educate you guys and explain some of our policies. Realize that our ad implementation policies can oftentimes be construed as some of the most difficult to understand. And keep in mind that we're trying to make things clearer here. We're trying to be more transparent. We are working very hard to clarify things in our Help Center with blog posts, with these Hangouts, and we'll continue to do these Hangouts. And I'll upload this video to our AdSense channel and to this event. Continue to comment. Continue to come to us with questions. Put questions in the event document. I'll continue to monitor this, and if we see questions that continue to be bubbled up, that'll let us know that there's something out there in the ecosystem that publishers don't really know as much about. We monitor the forums daily to see what issues are most consistently being escalated, what questions are consistently being asked, so that we can address those and make things clear, elucidate things for publishers. But again, at the end of the day, when you're building your site, when you're maintaining your site, try to make sure it's very clear what are ads, what are content. Don't be deceptive at all. Make it very clear. Don't try and encourage users to click on ads. Don't try to trick users into clicking on ads accidentally. We have methods to track all of these things, and they're all sort of varying levels of egregiousness in terms of the violation, but we're going to have to take action because what we're here trying to do is ensure a great user experience. With a great user experience, we also are trying to protect the advertiser, make sure the advertiser is getting their money's worth. With that great advertiser's experience, you get more competition, more interest, and more spend on the AdSense network. And when that happens, all publishers benefit as a whole. And when we get all three of those working together, we hopefully have a long-term, sort of economically sustainable and viable network that we're all really proud to be a part of. And that's why I work here on the policy team. That's why we have a global team dedicated to it. And you guys are a huge part of that ecosystem. So that's why we're here to work with you to create as good an ecosystem as possible. So I guess that's it for today. Thank you guys so much for coming by. Again, we'll put this video live in about a day or so. And continue to ask questions, comment, go to the Help Center, use the forums, and report any violations that you see out there in the wild. Thanks again, and have a great day.